Chapter 1135. Shinozaki Ichigo's face was distorted, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked around and found the Zanpakuto in Rukia's hand. He directly snatched it away and then pounced on Jillian fiercely. "You're brave, but you're still too weak," Dustless said lightly. Jillian wasn't worth mentioning, but to Shinozaki Ichigo, he was a monster. "This guy can see me, and he snatched my Zanpakuto." Rukia's sweat-stained little face was full of sluggishness. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak clearly. She subconsciously touched her hands, but her hands were empty. She stared blankly at Shinozaki Ichigo, who was hysterically slashing towards Mainaka. "Human, come back!" Rukia shouted loudly, and at the same time, she used Shuunpa and instantly appeared in front of Shinozaki Ichigo. "Give me back my Zanpakuto." Rukia's face was filled with anger. This human is so bold. She, a Shinigami, was robbed of her Zanpakuto by a mere human. It's simply a shame. "Get out of my way." Shinozaki Ichigo gasped and shouted with red eyes, "She killed my mother, I want revenge." "Stupid." Rukia was stunned when she heard this, and she scolded with a straight face, "If I were you, I would go and save her, maybe there's still a chance of survival." Although she said that, Rukia was sure that Shinozaki Ichigo's mother was dead. It must be Jillian's faint, and there was no chance of survival. She said that in hopes that Shinozaki Ichigo would give up his obsession. After all, Jillian was far from what a human could compete with. Bang! Shinozaki Ichigo quickly dropped his Zanpakuto and ran to his mother's side. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed. At this moment, his mother's body had turned into a pile of charcoal. "I didn't do it on purpose, I was saving you, otherwise, you would be the one who died." Dustless looked calm, and at the same time, he comforted himself. "This guy is really something, he actually threw my Zanpakuto on the ground." "Forget it, it doesn't suit your taste." Pouting her small mouth, she glared at Kurosaki Ichigo with dissatisfaction. When Rukia turned around, a violent wind suddenly came, and she was caught off guard and was blown away. Bang! Rukia's petite body was smashed against the wall. Her face was as pale as snow. She looked at the approaching Jillian and wanted to stand up, but her terrible physical condition made her unable to move. "Ao ao ao!" The heart-wrenching roar came again, and Shinozaki Ichigo's body suddenly shivered, and he ran to Rukia's side and picked up the cold Zanpakuto again. Holding the knife, his mind was filled with only one voice: chop the monster in front of him into pieces. Not bad. Rukia gave a rare compliment, and then sighed heavily. "I'm deeply sympathetic to your mother's plight, but I have to remind you that humans are still humans. They can't fight against the greater void, especially this kind of Jillian. I don't care. I have to kill him and avenge my mother. I don't care even if I have to sacrifice my life." Shinozaki Ichigo roared hoarsely and his body was trembling. "He actually has the resolve to perish together with us." Hearing this, Rukia's gem-like eyes flashed. She felt the constantly collapsing ground, and looking at the source, the unconscious Jillian was close at hand. "If you want to kill him, it's actually possible, but I'll lend you the power of the Shinigami to fight against him. It's finally finished. There are still so many variables." In the distance, Dustless, who heard this, breathed a sigh of relief. When he turned around and was about to leave leisurely, the footsteps of an uninvited guest immediately floated in front of him. "So it's you." Seeing this, Dustless grinned and said lightly, "It seems that you saw it just now. I won't explain. If I said that I didn't do it on purpose, would you believe me?" The person who came was a middle-aged uncle with a face full of stubble. At first glance, he didn't look very handsome, but the more you look at him, the more interesting and charming he became. This person was the former captain of the 10th Division, now called Shinozaki Ichigo. If I trusted you, I wouldn't have brought him here. Shinozaki Ichigo's face was expressionless as he waved the tachi in his hand. His actions explained everything. That's true. I've wasted my breath. Dustless stopped talking and pointed at Shinozaki Ichigo's situation. If I were you, I'd go and save my son first. Otherwise, if he dies, your Shiba family will have no descendants. But, I'll help you adopt your 2 daughters. Dustless's lips curled up high. It was hard not to think that he was as cunning as a fox. You're looking for death. Hearing this, Shinozaki Ichigo's killing intent rose. His family was his reverse scale, and Dustless took away his wife's life just like that. Now, he wasn't even going to let go of his daughters. How could he remain calm? How could he swallow this insult? Whoosh! A cold light came towards him. Shinozaki Ichigo's speed was unimaginably fast. How surprising. You're still so fast even after losing the power of the Shinigami. Your battle consciousness hasn't been destroyed. Dustless's eyes rippled as he spoke calmly. In an instant, Shinozaki Ishin, who was holding the hilt of his sword with both hands, pounced forward. His arms exerted force, and the moment the white light came down, Wuchin grabbed the sword god and threw Shinozaki Ishin away. Crack! 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 Many cracks appeared on the wall. Shinozaki Ichigo's expression was ugly as he sank into the cracks. He looked at Dustless with determination. This is spiritual pressure. You should have lost the power of the Shinigami. Frowning, Dustless locked his gaze on Shinozaki Ichigo. After sensing carefully for a moment, he quickly realized that something was wrong. This didn't belong to the Shinigami. Chapter 1136. In the past, Shinozaki Ishin fought Dustless with all his might and lost all his power. He still hadn't recovered, and this violent murderous spiritual pressure was completely different from the death gods. You're really unscrupulous in order to take revenge. Dustless smiled as he looked at Shinozaki Ishin, who was surrounded by a red light. This dense murderous intent was extremely scary, and those who didn't have a strong will would start hallucinating. Dustless stared at Ishin, who was being swallowed by the bone mask, and said meaningfully, "You've released the power of the greater void in your body. This is a big problem. Although you can still fight, you should know the consequences. Without the suppression of the death god's power, you'll become a greater void in no time." Roar! Shinozaki Ishin let out a sharp roar. At this moment, his face was completely unrecognizable. His eyes were bloodshot, and his body was filled with murderous intent. So what? As long as I can die with you, I don't care. Shinozaki Ishin gritted his teeth and said word by word. His hatred for Dustless was as deep as the ocean. If it weren't for him, he wouldn't have lost the power of the death god. If it weren't for him, his wife and family wouldn't be in danger. The main culprit of everything was Dustless. Bring it on. Seeing that Shinozaki Ishin was determined to fight him, Dustless didn't want to waste time talking. He hooked his finger at Shinozaki Ishin, and his expression was full of provocation. Shoo shoo shoo. Seeing this, Shinozaki Ishin's expression turned serious. His feet collapsed on the ground, and a shocking crack appeared. Boom boom boom. There was a sudden gust of wind from the left. Wuchin turned his head and saw a claw that was sharper than a knife coming at his head. It was a ruthless attack. Dustless didn't dodge. His body emitted a warm glow that was as dazzling as the sun. The claws that came in contact with Dustless's body instantly lost their effect. Not effective. Shinozaki Ishin, who was being swallowed by the greater void's violent spiritual pressure, couldn't help but pause. You want to kill me? No problem, but this place is not suitable for fighting. You don't want your son and daughter to get involved in our fight, do you? Dustless casually waved his hand, and a crescent-shaped long and narrow button appeared in the void. He leaped into it. "Humph, even if it's the 18th level of hell, I'll accompany you once." Witnessing the bottomless abyss, Shinozaki Ishin followed Dustless into it. The grudge between them ran deep, and now that Dustless had indirectly caused the death of his wife, Shinozaki Ishin was enraged, whether it was intentional or not. "I would rather die in glory than live in dishonor." The mysterious dark space was very narrow. In just a few breaths of time, Shinozaki had tracked down a strange yet familiar world. Wind and sand filled the sky. The void trembled, and Shinozaki Ishin disappeared without a trace. "Then I'll have to ask you to die now." The void behind Dustless rippled. Shinozaki Ishin, who was holding a sharp ancient sword, flashed and slashed at his head with all his strength. "You can kill me if you want, but at least look up." Dustless pointed at the sky and smiled mysteriously. Shinozaki Ishin was stunned. He instinctively looked at the sky. His eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. "What the hell is that? Why are there so many of them?" Chapter 1137. Shinozaki Ishin stared blankly at the mysterious redwood falling from the sky. He couldn't help but stare blankly. The huge amount of wood and the area they covered made his heart skip a beat. Even his hatred for Dustless had lessened because of these things that appeared out of nowhere. There are so many pieces of wood, and they cover the entire sky. How did this guy get them? Shinozaki Ishin's eyes widened. He was so shocked that he even forgot about Dustless in front of him. Suddenly, he smelled the scent of death and shuddered. His gaze immediately returned to Dustless. He thought to himself, no matter what, he is the one who cast the spell. As long as I kill this guy, the danger before me will naturally be resolved. Shinozaki Ishin's brain cells spun rapidly. He immediately made up his mind. He drew out a huge amount of spiritual pressure from his body. It was as vast as the ocean. His special white broadsword glowed with a blood-red glow. "You want to take this opportunity to kill me?" Dustless, who knew Shinozaki Ishin's intention, was both angry and amused. Shinozaki Ishin was delusional enough to think that he could turn the tables in such a short time. His brain must have been fried by the flames of revenge. He immediately formed a seal with both hands. The falling redwood became even faster. He shouted, "Immortal spell, bright god gate." Swish! Swish! The thousands of redwood circles seemed to have become tens of thousands of times heavier. Their speed increased by a few times in an instant. Under Dustless's control, they all flew towards Shinozaki Ishin mercilessly. At the same time, Shinozaki Ishin's white broadsword had obviously reached its limit. A blood-red glow could be seen clearly. It gathered and did not dissipate. The red glow was soul-stirring and sharp. Shinozaki Ishin glared at Dustless ferociously. He recalled the hatred he had for all these years. He swung the blood-red glow in his hand and shouted, "Die!" Swish! Swish! The red slash was coming towards Shinozaki Ishin with boundless power. The color was as demonic and frightening as human blood. Dustless sized up the incoming slash expressionlessly. He floated in the sky quietly as if nothing existed. His pitch-black eyes were very calm. Just as the slash was about to swallow Dustless, the redwood circles arrived as expected. Bang bang bang. In the nick of time, the red divine wood destroyed it. Wave after wave of attacks directly smashed the slash into pieces. What was most shocking was that the redwood was like an invisible mouth. The slash didn't even explode, and the spiritual pressure was absorbed by it while it was still alive. This. Gulp. Even with Shinozaki's strong mentality, he could not help but sob. Shock replaced the weathered look on his face. This thing can absorb my spiritual pressure. Shinozaki growled absent-mindedly. His words were filled with astonishment. Looking at his dazed expression, it was as if his worldview had collapsed, and his thoughts were in a mess. You should thank me for taking a fancy to your son. After a long time, ripples spread out in the boundless sky. Dustless's voice gathered beside Shinozaki Ishin's ears and lingered for a long time. After all, he is the most outstanding test subject. His future achievements will far surpass yours. Dustless was very confident, with an expression that said, "You should thank me." Roar, roar, roar. The unique roar of the great void erupted again. Shinozaki Ishin's eyes gradually lost the wisdom that a human should have, replaced by endless killing intent and hatred, as well as many negative emotions. Shinozaki Ishin knew that he did not have much time left. If he did not take care of Dustless quickly, he would fall into the void and completely lose his humanity. Void Flash. The red flash swept across, carrying with it Shinozaki Ishin's anger and hatred. The scene was spectacular, and the thick beam of light almost covered the entire sky. You reckless thing. I wanted to let you live a little longer, but you're so untactful. Since you want to die so badly, I'll send you to the netherworld immediately to reunite with your wife. With a cold expression, Dustless's body floated with light and dove toward the incoming beam of light. Has this guy gone mad? Seeing this, Shinozaki Ishin was shocked. Facing Void Flash, Dustless did not dodge. Instead, he charged toward Void Flash head-on. He was simply courting death. However, in the next second, Shinozaki Ishin understood the reason. The moment he came into close contact with Void Flash, Dustless's entire body turned into light. His entire body shone with a bright light, and Void Flash could not attack him at all. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Shinozaki Ishin. His empty right hand glowed, and the outline of a shining sword vaguely appeared. He shouted, "Sky Sword of Clouds." Dustless was like the sun in the sky. His expression was cold. Then, under Shinozaki Ishin's shocked gaze, the golden light slashed down. Pucci! Shinozaki Ishin's entire body was split in half by Dustless. His method was extremely cruel. His purplish-red blood dyed the ground of the void circle red. Seeing this, Dustless did not give up. A pink circular flame flew out of his right hand. Path of Destruction 54, Flame Destruction. The circular flame flew out and locked onto Shinozaki Ishin, who was split in half on the ground. Boom, boom, boom. The ground was set ablaze, and a huge mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Shinozaki Ishin, who was split in half, disappeared with the wind. Not even his body was left behind. Idiot, you were no match for me before. Now that you've lost your Shinigami's power, how can you be my match? It seems that hatred has indeed burned your brain, Shiba Ishin. Dustless glanced at the shadow that disappeared with the wind. His expression returned to its usual coldness. Chapter 1138. Dustless opened the door to the modern world and stepped into it. Just as he was about to leave Hueco Mundo, he felt a gust of wind behind him, followed by a sharp pain in his heart. Pucci! The ice-cold long saber minced Dustless's internal organs, ending his life in an instant. He turned his head around and saw Shinozaki Ishin in perfect condition. You bastard, you should be dead already. Dustless clenched his teeth and stared at Shinozaki Ishin with bloodshot eyes. And this is, he opened his eyes wide and looked at the katana in his chest. It was obviously not the katana that belonged to Voids. It was a Zanpakuto from head to toe. Impossible, you should have lost the power of the Shinigami. How can you still have a Zanpakuto? Dustless exclaimed. His tone had lost its usual calmness. Hee. God's plan is better than man's. I did lose the power of the Shinigami to escape from you. But I also regained another power. Shinozaki Ishin smiled and said, I did lose all my power at that time, but because of the void, I regained my power. The power of the Shinigami and the void have both returned. The void? Hearing this, Wu Chen's face sank. His eyes flickered as he said, You mean the void created by Aizen Muzu? The one created with the soul of the Shinigami as the foundation. So it was void white. Dustless understood how Shinozaki Ishin regained the power of the Shinigami. Because Void White was able to use the power of the Shinigami, Shinozaki Ishin, who fused with Void White, naturally obtained the power of the Shinigami and the Shinigami. I underestimated you. You purposely hid the power of the Shinigami just to bait me. Dustless suddenly understood Shinozaki Ishin's intention. He cursed himself for being careless. That's right. Shinozaki Ishin nodded and said, I fought with you before, so I know how scary you are. That's why I had to find another way to deal with you. So you were faking everything just now? Dustless asked in a hoarse voice. There's nothing I can do about it. The reason is that you're too terrifying. Shinozaki Ishin sneered, and the spiritual pressure that belonged to the Grim Reaper in his body surged again. Thanks to you, I've obtained the power of the Grim Reaper and the Void, which is commonly known as the Mask. I've also been fortunate enough to obtain the ability of enhanced regeneration. I underestimated you. Lowering his head, Wu Chen confessed to this without hiding anything. Of course. Don't think that you can kill a former captain so easily. Shinozaki Ishin's spiritual pressure rose rapidly, and his entire body was filled with a scorching aura. He roared, Don't think that this is the end. Buzz buzz buzz. As soon as Shinozaki Ishin finished speaking, the ground began to tremble, and a giant blade-shaped flame appeared on the ground. 96 of the Tao of Destruction, 1 blade cremation. The gigantic blade-shaped flame pulverized the soft sand. After living in the modern world for a few years, he had a lot of interactions with the person in front of him, and they were in a relationship where they used each other. Chapter 1139. This person was Dustless's future ally, Urahara Kasuk. It's you. Urahara Kasuk looked at Wu Chen with doubt in his surprised tone. He immediately looked at the exaggerated crack on the ground, and his eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Who did this? Urahara Kasuk was like being struck by lightning, his mind was in chaos. The crack in the ground that was attacked by Kansusanu seemed to split the entire Hueco Mundo into two. It was extremely shocking. It was the first time in Urahara Kasuk's life to see such a dreamy scene. This, looking at the torn Hueco Mundo below, it was as terrifying as a natural disaster. Dustless said calmly, I happened to encounter a Vasto Lord before, so I killed him. Hearing this, Urahara Kasuk's expression suddenly froze. What did he mean by killing him? He couldn't help but feel sorry for Vasto Lord who was just killed by Dustless. It gave people the feeling that he had casually killed Jillian. What's the matter? Seeing Urahara Kasuk motionless, Dustless asked, If there's nothing else, I'll go first. Urahara Kasuk couldn't help but look up at Dustless, licked his dry tongue, looked at his back and asked, Are we still allies in the same boat? Of course. Dustless replied directly without thinking, now, and in the future, we only have one enemy at present, Aizen Sosuke. Waving his hand to open Hueco Mundo, Dustless stepped into it and merged with the darkness. Then the broken black space began to heal. In the cold and desolate void, only Urahara Kasuk was left alone, silent. Caw caw caw. After a while, a dazzling white light swept past Urahara Kasuk, showing the outline of a crossing gate, and then a wheat-colored young woman stepped out of it. Her figure was curvaceous and very hot. Miss Yaichi. Urahara Kasuk was stunned for a moment before he said, Is the group of people from the Masked Legion okay? Fortunately, they escaped quickly in the last battle of Soul Society. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. His condition is not bad. Saifeng's courtyard nodded and gave Urahara Kasuke a comforting look, indicating that he didn't need to worry. Immediately, his face inevitably became gloomy, and his wrinkled little face lost its former brilliance. He looked very decadent and worried. But then again, is it really reliable to cooperate with that guy? Why do I feel like they're colluding with each other? Dustless's back appeared in his mind. Those deep eyes could devour people's minds, making it impossible for people to understand what he was thinking. To be honest, I have the same feeling. Urahara Kasuke shrugged and sighed heavily. Not only are they colluding with each other, they are clearly leading the wolf into the house. If we don't control it well, we'll be swallowed alive sooner or later. After hearing Ye's question, Urahara Kasuke said, but even if we're walking on a tightrope on the cliff, we can only brace ourselves. If we go against that guy, we'll be annihilated in an instant. After that, Urahara Kasuke looked down at the Hueco Mundo destroyed by Kansusuno perfect form and didn't speak for a long time. We can only take one step at a time, I hope we're right. Saifeng's courtyard was also very melancholy. They wanted to resist Dustless, but their confidence was shattered by the tens of kilometers long crack on the ground. If they resist Aizen Sosuke, even if they're not his opponent, they still have a way to retreat. But if they resist Dustless, they'll be annihilated on the spot. They have no choice but to follow Dustless to the end. But at least we're safe for the time being. As that guy said, our current enemy is the same, and that's Aizen Sosuke. After a while, Urahara Kasuke breathed a sigh of relief. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, this is also a blessing in disguise. Looks like it's done. In the modern world, Dustless wandered around the vicinity of Shinozaki Ichigo's house, searching for traces of the Great Void. The spiritual pressure of Jillian that he released previously had already disappeared with the wind, and there was still a lot of dust on the ground. Ah! How cruel. He actually cut Jillian into 8 pieces. Dustless's sharp eyes immediately understood that this was Kurosaki Ichigo's doing. His gaze fell on the head of the boy in the rain. The rain from the sky drenched Kurosaki Ichigo's clothes. At this moment, he was expressionless, and the whole world was looking at him coldly. He was very disappointed. Shinozaki Ichigo was wearing the Death Tyrant suit and stood alone in the world of rain. There were still blood stains on his zanpakuto. Seeing this, Dustless's cold heart remained unmoved. Perhaps he had become immune after doing so many bad things, and human emotions were gradually drifting away from him. Next, it's your turn, Rukia. Taking a deep look at Rukia, who fainted due to excessive fatigue, Dustless turned around and left. The next step is to continue to persuade Aizen Sosuke to send people to capture Rukia, and then take the opportunity to lure Shinozaki Ichigo into Soul Society. Returning to the villa he robbed, Dustless first took a bath, then went to bed and slept. Soon, he would take the opportunity to sneak into Soul Society and take advantage of the chaos caused by Kurosaki Ichigo's invasion of Soul Society. He would use the star badge he stole from Jugram to sneak into the first team and steal the Bankai of the captain. Chapter 1140. Soul Society Central Room 46. This was where Sosuke Aizen frequented. He used a special channel to monitor the place he wanted to monitor. Phew, looks like it's finally done. On the LCD screen, Sosuke Aizen looked at Shinozaki Ichigo with a satisfied smile. It's not done yet. The surface of the Hogyoku flashed with light, and Dustless disguised as its consciousness continued, we still need to lure that idiot Shinozaki Ichigo to Soul Society. That's right. Sosuke Aizen nodded, then touched his eyes and whispered, leave this to Kachiki Byakuya. If he knows that Rukia passed the power of Shinigami to Shinozaki Ichigo, he will be furious. Yes, he is the kind of person who cares about his reputation. He will be eager to capture Rukia, but there is no need to expose the news in advance. At least let Shinozaki Ichigo get used to the power of Shinigami. Dustless disguised as Hogyoku's consciousness said. Makes sense, time flew, and in the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. In the dark central room 46. Everyone, Kuchiki Byakuya looked around at the sages with no expression. Perhaps because they were all nobles, there was a rare touch of vitality in his tone. He asked in confusion, "Why did you call me here? What is it?" Rukia lent the power of Shinigami to a mere human. As the patriarch of the Kuchiki family, you should give us an explanation. A sage said sternly. This is a big problem. Another sage also chimed in, she must be arrested immediately and sentenced to death. That's right, that kind of person is a disgrace to Soul Society. A large group of sages began to attack Rukia. Their voices were as harsh as flies, and it echoed in Kuchiki Byakuya's ears for a long time. Does anyone have any evidence? Shomubaya asked calmly as a strange glint flashed across his eyes. Of course. On the huge square crystal screen, the scene of Rukia inserting the Zanpakuto into Shinozaki Ichigo's body flashed, and all the power of Shinigami was transferred. Kurosaki Ichigo also transformed and carried a huge Zanpakuto. No problem, I will go and capture him. I will definitely give everyone an explanation. The dignity of Soul Society will not be trampled on by a human. Shomubaya said coldly, his tone decisive, his cold eyes devoid of any human emotions. Goodbye. As soon as he finished speaking, Shomubaya also disappeared without a trace and retreated outside of Central Room 46. Without a doubt, Central Room 46 was wiped out many years ago. Naturally, it was Sosuke Aizen who secretly controlled it. This self-righteous idiot. Outside Central Room 46, Dustless quietly stared at Kumubaya's back. He despised him in his heart before heading to the first squad's quarters. After being a captain for a while, Dustless was quite familiar with Soul Society's location. A few minutes later, he arrived at the first team's quarters. Defense seems to be very lazy. Chapter 1141. Even though Jiro was a vice-captain, he had followed Yamamoto for nearly 1,000 years, and he was also a rare genius. It took him only 30 days to learn the Bankai, which showed his extraordinary talent. But these were all just fancy for Dustless. The difference between them was too big. Ha! You didn't die. You are really tenacious. In fact, you can avoid the disaster by lying down quietly. Suddenly feeling that his right foot was caught, Dustless turned his head and happened to see Jiro, who looked pale but refused to give up. Even though his chest was bleeding, and his ribs and heart were exposed to the air, he still refused to let Dustless go. This courage was worthy of respect. Since you want to die so much, I will fulfill your wish. The golden broadsword was raised again, and when he was about to cut down, looking at Jiro's determined expression, Dustless suddenly put down his hands. Of course, it was not because he was influenced by Jiro. TSK. Vice Captain of Sparrow Tribe, I want to thank you. Because of you, I suddenly thought of a good idea. His eyeballs were rolling, glowing with bright colors. What are you going to do? Being stared at by Dustless's shining eyes, Jiro was also a man who had lived for thousands of years. Seeing Dustless's cunning eyes, he smelled a strong sense of crisis. Suddenly, he felt that it would be better if he died. What am I going to do? You will know soon. Regardless of how Jiro struggled, Dustless picked him up and went straight to the team house that was usually used for the captain's meeting. Strange, why is my right eye twitching recently? Looking at the picturesque scenery of Soul Society in the distance, Yamamoto frowned slightly. His body, which was leaning on a crutch, looked particularly old under the sunset. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A burst of wind came at a fast speed. Yamamoto's puzzled expression suddenly disappeared, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. "How dare you break into the first team, who are you?" Yamamoto said sternly. Combined with the scars all over his head, he was extremely imposing. "Sparrow Tribe." Staring at the figure in the mysterious man's right arm, Head Captain Yamamoto's eyes almost popped out of his sockets. He almost roared, "Put down the person in your hand before you completely anger me." The veins on Yamamoto's forehead bulged as he shouted in a low voice, trying his best to conceal the flames in his heart that could burn the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The blazing flames roared, and the temperature of the entire 1st Division's quarters rose by several hundred times. However, they did not dare to approach Dustless, or rather, they did not dare to approach Minister Jiro. The flowing fire edge didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Yamamoto is already old. I'm afraid that when he suppressed me, he might not have been able to exert the full power of Ryujin Jaka. If it were me, with my attainments, I would definitely not be worse than him. Dustless's heart almost jumped out of his chest as he looked at Ryujin Jakuhuo with fiery eyes. He looked forward to seeing Ryujin Jakuhuo. With Ryujin Jakuhuo, his combat power would definitely increase exponentially. Apart from Spirit King, Yamamoto's Ryujin Jakuhuo was the only thing that could make Dustless interested. The Star Badge of Annihilation. It seems that only when the Death God uses Bankai can it be taken away. Head Captain Yamamoto will definitely not use Bankai so easily. The temperature of Zanka no Tachi will slowly evaporate the water in Soul Society until Soul Society collapses. Dustless frowned as he thought in his heart. That's right. A cunning glint flashed across Wu Chen's eyes. The masked Wu Chen sneered and said, "Immediately release Wu Chen, who was suppressed more than 10 years ago. Otherwise, I will kill Chief K. Jiro right now." This sentence made Minister Jiro's blood come back to life, and he hurriedly said to the Head Captain, "You must not let that big devil go. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. He alone can fight against the entire Death God." Except for Urahara Kasuke and Yi Yi, everyone in Soul Society still thought that Dustless was still imprisoned in Avicii Hell. Impossible. Without even thinking about it, Head Captain Yamamoto directly rejected this absurd proposal. Soul Society spent a lot of effort to capture him, don't even think about letting him go. Is that so? Hearing this, Dustless smiled indifferently. "I will only give you 30 seconds, if you don't let him go, the head of the Vice Captain of Sparrow will be removed." After that, Dustless indifferently raised his Zanpakuto and placed it on Minister Jiro's head. This old man will definitely not compromise, so he will only save Jiro at all costs. At such a short distance, I have to kill him in one blow. Otherwise, Jiro will be the one to die. This old man will most likely be forced to perform decapitation. Only in this way can he kill me with one blow. Dustless sneered in his heart, and slowly took out the star badge that belonged to Quincy. Once Head Captain Yamamoto dared to use Bankai, he will take the opportunity to seize Ryujin Jaka. Sparrow Tribe has followed me for thousands of years, I must not watch him fall indifferently. Head Captain Yamamoto was also struggling in his heart, and his hands holding his Zanpakuto were sweating. After a while, Dustless raised his Zanpakuto and pointed it at Minister Jiro's head, and said indifferently, 30 seconds is up, since you don't agree, then he will die. Wait. The head captain suddenly said, I agree to your conditions, I am willing to release Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but stagnate, and said in a daze, he actually agreed. Taking advantage of Dustless's sluggish state, a fiery red shadow instantly swept in front of him, and a blazing flame rushed towards him. This cunning old man. Seeing this, Dustless's pupils suddenly shrank, and immediately understood that this was old man Yamamoto's stalling tactic, waiting for him to reveal a flaw and choose to attack. Bankai Remnant Flame Tachi. Zanka no Tachi didn't listen to him, but the star badge in Dustless's hand was still shining. It was very similar to the aura of Zanka no Tachi, as if it was sealed in it. This was definitely not as simple as a coincidence. You killed me once just now, so I'll accept Zanka no Tachi as a gift. As for your lives. TSK, an old man who has lost his bankai, I really can't bring myself to kill him. Hearing Wu Chen's words, Yamamoto and Jiro felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave, especially Yamamoto, who asked with a pale face, "You took away my bankai. You are the one who took it away." That's absolutely impossible. Really? It seems that you don't believe it. That's good, I also want to test the power of Zanka no Tachi. Hearing this, Dustless's face flashed a strange smile, and then under the surprised gaze of Yamamoto and Yamamoto, Ryatsu erupted from his body as hot as Yamamoto's. All things in the world turned to ashes. Ryujin Jaka. After the release of Zanpakuto, Dustless's body immediately erupted with a large number of flames, and the team behind him was suddenly burned to ashes. The terrifying high temperature turned everything into ashes, just like his liberation language. You bastard! Seeing this, Yamamoto's old face turned green, and suddenly a flash of light flashed in his mind. Remembering Dustless's strange behavior before, his face was pale as he said, "You deliberately asked me to release Captain Dustless, who was imprisoned in the past. In fact, you want to force me to release Bankai. It seems that you are not confused, that is indeed the case." Under the mask, Wu Qin was immensely proud. Now that he had obtained Ryujin Jaka, his mood was unusually happy. It was rare for him to explain, "I know you won't choose to release the imprisoned captain, and I also know you won't give up on Minister Jiro, so you will only choose to attack me. All of this is actually within my expectations, but it's a pity that you think you have won." Ridiculous. "I'm sorry to disturb you, head captain, goodbye." After saying that, Dustless disappeared from the first team's building. Listen to Yamamoto, no matter what, you must not let other captains know that the ability of Zanpakuto was taken away from me. Yamamoto warned cautiously. The biggest deterrent of a head captain is strength, or Zanka no Tachi. Without Zanpakuto, the consequences will be unimaginable, and Seoul society will inevitably fall into unprecedented turmoil. Chapter 1143. After leaving the First Division, Dustless went straight to the Fourth Division. He was running and flying all the way with a happy heart. After taking away Yamamoto's Ryujin Jaka, Dustless recalled the head captain's face that was as red as a pig's liver. That complacent old man always uses flowing fire edge to show off his muscles. Let's see what you can do in the future. Wu Chen gloated and said to himself with a smile in his eyes. Seeing the pain of losing Yamamoto's Zanpakuto, Dustless was very happy. An old man who has lived for thousands of years should have retired a long time ago. It's time for someone else to take over the position of head captain. Dustless's eyes glowed as he sped up. The Fourth Division's building was right in front of him. When he got close, he withdrew all his spiritual pressure. After all, he was still a prisoner of Seoul society. If he walked around openly, he would definitely attract endless trouble. It wasn't his first time coming to the Fourth Division. When Dustless was still the Fourth Division's vice-captain, he could see the entire Fourth Division with his eyes closed. In a few seconds, he arrived at Unohana's captain's office. TSK. So serious. Inside Unohana's captain's office, she was currently reading through many documents with a serene expression. Her expression was extremely serious and even meticulous. It was the complete opposite of her usual gentle self. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A shadow flashed through the air as Dustless entered through the window. While Unohana was still in a daze, he hugged her tightly from behind. "It's you." Unohana turned her head in surprise as her eyes widened. Unohana grumbled, "You left for a few years without any news. I heard that you have a few lovers in the modern realm. They're living a carefree life." Hearing this, Dustless's expression turned awkward. Anohana's words made his stomach churn. He immediately promised, "Ray, my heart is comparable to the sun and the moon. My feelings for you will never change." Women were meant to be coaxed. Although this kind of promise was very common, its effect was astonishing. Even if they knew that it was a lie, they would still be in a good mood. Sweet talker. Unohua rolled her eyes and asked straightforwardly, coming to Soul Society for no reason. "What kind of chore do you want me to do? Why would I give you such a hard job? I'm not a jinx." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry, feeling deeply speechless, and then said bluntly, "Soul Society is about to face a great change, and the Soul Society that has been silent for thousands of years will be completely reshuffled." Unohana Retsu frowned and asked, "You're saying that Sosuke Aizen has already made his move?" Speaking of which, Room 46 recently ordered Kimu Heartwarming to capture Rukia. I presume the mastermind behind the scenes is Aizen Sosuke. I was the one who instigated Sosuke Aizen to do this. Dustless admitted frankly, his tone free and easy. Unohua was stunned and asked in surprise, "Rukia is your subordinate, are you going to attack her?" "Of course not. When I was the captain of the 7th Division, Rukia was one of the only 3 members I had. She didn't have any direct conflict with me, so the reason I instigated Sosuke Aizen to capture her was to lure Shinozaki Ichigo to take the bait. Shinozaki Ichigo cares a lot about restraints, so once he hears that Rukia is about to be executed, he will definitely rush to Soul Society without stopping." Dustless quickly explained. This was a plan he had thought of many years ago. However, after Sosuke Aizen betrays Soul Society, there will be one person who will definitely die. Dustless spat out a bone-chilling breath, his eyes filled with killing intent. Definitely die. Hearing the thick killing intent in Dustless's words, Unohana Retsu's eyes flashed as she guessed, "The person you're talking about, isn't it the head captain?" "You're smart, it's indeed him." Dustless's eyes burned with flames, not bothering to hide his growing ambition. "That old man is too stubborn, so I can only take advantage of the chaos to kill him. But it's not my turn to do it, I'll just borrow a knife to kill him." Borrow a knife to kill him. Hearing this, Unohana Retsu thought of the head captain's strength and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Just whose knife?" Soul Society doesn't have a direct confrontation with the head captain. Doesn't exist. That was in the past, but times have changed. That old man is already nearing the end of his days. Dustless chuckled in high spirits. Taking out the crimson flame star badge, the scorching temperature immediately attracted Unohana Retsu's attention. Could this be Ryujin Jaka? Swallowing her breath with difficulty, Unohana Retsu muttered in shock. After confirming it carefully, "It can't be wrong, this is definitely Ryujin Jaka. How did it end up in your hands?" Unohana Retsu's eyes locked onto Dustless as if she had seen a ghost, unable to shift her gaze away. "Do you really want to know?" Dustless looked at Unohana Retsu's face full of hope, as if she wanted to know, and said with an evil grin, "If I remember correctly, Yong-yin and the others have all gone for a routine checkup. Do you think we should take advantage of this rare opportunity to do something meaningful?" Something meaningful. Unohana Retsu clearly did not understand what he meant. Her nose wrinkled, and just as she was about to ask, she saw the evil grin on Dustless's face and immediately understood what he meant. "This is the captain's office." Unohana Retsu pouted unhappily, her face turning red. "That's true, it is indeed a little inappropriate. How about I go to the bushes outside the window? There are fewer people there and the environment is more elegant. No one will disturb me, and the most important thing is the ventilation," Dustless said with an evil grin. Seeing this, Unohana Retsu gave up and could only whisper into Dustless's ear, "Hurry up, Yong-yin and the others will be back in an hour." Dustless was overjoyed and pounced on Unohana Retsu, skillfully undressing her. What followed was a long and drawn-out hand-to-hand battle. Chapter 1144. On the bed, Uno Hanalai was sweating profusely. Her eyes were blank and empty, as if her soul had been sucked away. Her limbs were weak, and it was difficult for her to even move. Her entire body was soft and sluggish. Turning her head with great difficulty, Uno Hua looked at Dustless, who was enjoying his tea on the sofa. She couldn't help but scold, "You said half an hour before. Now that you've messed around, you've increased the time by 5 to 6 times. Uno Hanalai forced herself to stand up, but intense pain came from her lower body. She had no choice but to lie down again. Smelling the rotting smell in the air, she felt awkward and gloomy. Her face was so red that it was burning. I couldn't help it. You know how difficult it is for the beast in your heart to settle things. Dustless shrugged as if it had nothing to do with him. He then flattered, if you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself. How could you let go of such a great opportunity? Earlier, Toru and Yong-yin had come, but they were blocked by Dustless's enchantment. After shamelessly doing it for a few hours, Dustless finally stopped. Uno Hanalai was also in this state. What do you plan to do after killing the captain? Team Zero will definitely appear again, and there will be a lot of trouble. Uno Hanalai sighed heavily. Soul Society was plagued with disasters, but at the same time, she didn't doubt Dustless's idea. Why did Soul Society have to face so many disasters? To put it bluntly, it was because they didn't have enough strength. If they had Dustless's strength, they would be able to fight against all the Shinigami. Soul Society would naturally be peaceful if they didn't. Don't worry, I'm just borrowing someone else's knife to kill them. I'll use Sosuke Aizen to kill the captain, and in the end, they won't suspect me. When the time comes, I'll return to the abyss to show my loyalty. Dustless said mysteriously. Return to the abyss. After thinking for a while, Uno Hualai still could not understand Dustless's intentions, so she asked, it's a good thing that you were able to come out. If you were to walk right into the trap again, it would take a lot more effort to get out. Don't worry, I'm just going to go through the motions to fool the others. When the time comes, someone will release me and elect me as the new captain. Dustless gave Uno Huaretsu a smug look, and he closed his eyes in satisfaction. His leisurely appearance was filled with confidence, as if the future was in his hands. It was getting cold and late at night. When Soul Society was about to turn dark, Kuchiki Byakuya, who had left Soul Society for the modern world, finally returned. Other than him and Vice Captain Rinji, there was also a haggard-looking girl, Kuchiki Rukia. Captain only crippled his death god power. His life is not in danger. Seeing Rukia's lifeless eyes, Rinji Ase sighed with a complicated expression, that kid is just a mere human, you don't have to worry about him so much. Thank you, Rinji. Rukia's tone was sincere as she thanked him from the bottom of her heart. He carefully observed Rukia's expression from the corner of his eyes. After hearing that Kuchiki Ichigo's life was not in danger, she became a lot more cheerful. Seeing this scene, Rinji Ase was so angry that he stomped his feet. Those bastards in room 46 must be blind. Lucia, the Grim Reaper, is going to be sentenced to death. That Ichigo Shinozaki is not going to get involved. Are those nobles' brains damaged? Rinji cursed in his heart. While he was cursing Central 46, he didn't forget to curse Ichigo Shinozaki. He was the one who started all of this, but the main culprit was still safe and sound. Looks like it's going to start soon. Suddenly, a bright light came from the alley 100 meters away. Dustless heard the conversation between Rinji Ase, Byakuya, and Rukia clearly. Not killing Shinozaki Ichigo and only crippling his Shinigami's power was your captain's intention. It's an order from the Central Room 46. Kuchiki Byakuya. What a law-abiding captain. Sosuke Aizen used Kyoka Suigetsu to hypnotize Byakuya and gave Byakuya the order to cripple Kuchiki Ichigo's death god power. Dustless glanced at them deeply, then turned his head and disappeared into the night sky. In a few days, Urahara Kasuke will help Kuchiki Ichigo regain his power. Of course, his companions will also invade Soul Society. Everything is about to start. Sosuke Aizen will also officially betray Soul Society. Next is how to trick Sosuke Aizen to kill the head captain. Dustless's brain was spinning rapidly. Sosuke Aizen was not an idiot. He would not blindly challenge the head captain without absolute confidence. While Dustless was looking for a plan to kill the head captain, Kurosaki Ichigo and the others were also undergoing rigorous training. After Kurosaki Byakuya and the others left and returned to Soul Society, Urahara Kasuke immediately looked for Dream and promised to help Kurosaki Ichigo find the Shinigami's power. He thought that he would hesitate, but who knew that the anxious Kurosaki Ichigo would agree to help Urahara Kasuke without thinking. The death of his parents was a huge blow to Kuchiki Ichigo. He also realized how small he was. He could barely deal with a roadside Shinigami, but those captain-level Shinigami could easily kill him. If he was strong enough, Kuchiki Ichigo would not have been taken away by Byakuya. In the end, he was still too weak. All of this was the motivation for Kuchiki Ichigo to become stronger. Chapter 1145. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had passed. During this period, Dustless stayed in Soul Society, quietly waiting for the news of Kurosaki Ichigo and the others invading Soul Society. His strength had reached the peak of perfection. He hid in the 4th Division every day and lived a drunken life with Unohana Retsu. Although it was a little boring, Wuchin was also very comfortable with a beautiful woman accompanying him. In the 4th Division's building, Dustless leisurely crossed his legs, staring at the exquisite ceiling. Just now, Unohana Retsu was called for a captain's meeting. About half an hour ago, Hell Butterfly called Unohana Retsu away. It happened so suddenly that even Dustless didn't know what happened, but he was sure it wasn't something good. Because the captains of the various divisions were called to the 1st Division. At this moment, the atmosphere in the 1st Division was very solemn, and the captains were very cautious. Even Shunsui, who was usually carefree, had a serious expression. Captain Aizen is strong, how could he be killed for no reason? 40 minutes ago, the body of the 5th Division's captain, Sosuke Aizen, was found. His death was very tragic, and he was nailed to the wall of Soul Society. This is not normal, there is no large-scale Ryatsu fluctuation. It's impossible to kill a captain silently. Shunsui frowned and analyzed. Sosuke Aizen's strength was known to everyone after the battle with Dustless. He was one of the top existences in Soul Society. If we have to find someone who can kill Captain Aizen silently, I can't think of anyone other than that man. Seizen said, pointing the finger at Dustless. He's still locked in the abyss, how could he go out? How could old man Yamamoto not notice? Shunsui raised his doubts, his voice even heavier. If Dustless could sneak out without anyone noticing, and even head Captain Yamamoto didn't notice, it would be too terrifying. Even so, who else can do it besides him? The 2nd Division's captain, Soifan, looked at Yamamoto. Then let's go to the abyss to take a look. Head Captain Yamamoto's expression sank. He chose to be careful. There's no need for that, right? Unohua Lai's expression changed slightly, but in the next second, she covered it up perfectly. Unnecessary action. I don't think there's a need for a routine check. After all, that man was able to withstand the full force of Soul Society's siege by himself. It's normal for him to escape. Zhui Zhen, who didn't get along with Dustless, said. I agree. After all, Wuchin is not an ordinary person. Everyone knows about his combat strength. Furthermore, I can't think of anyone else who could kill a captain of Soul Society without anyone noticing. The silent Jushiro Yukitake said. Unohua clenched her fists tightly. Dustless was still in her 4th Division. Clang! In the dark and deathly silent Avicii hell, a series of rumbles suddenly rang out. Several figures were faintly discernible in the darkness. One could vaguely make out their pure white captain's feather weaves. There's no one here. Suozhen was shocked. He used his Ryatsu to search for Dushless, but there was no one here. There was no Ryatsu at all. I say, you idiot dog, how did you become a captain? You can't even see a living person. I suggest you go home, wash up, and sleep. In the deepest part of the dark space, a ripple appeared in the air. Then, a merciless mocking sound entered the ears of the captains. What did you say? Hearing Ji Hao's words, Suozhen's hair stood straight up. His face blushed as he yelled, "How dare you, a treacherous man, enough, Captain Yamamoto." Head Captain Yamamoto waved his hand and walked close to Dushless. He circled around him and noticed that the seal on Dushless didn't loosen. Then, he said, "The seal is still there. Captain Aizen's death has nothing to do with him. I was wondering why you guys came to see me in groups. Looks like you guys are up to no good." Dushless sighed. Then, he said with disdain, "Sosuke Aizen is dead. God has finally opened his eyes. It's a pity that I didn't kill him last time. Now that I've caught the murderer, please thank him for me." Hearing this, all the captains frowned. Dushless was strong, and his mouth was vicious. How is this possible? He is clearly in my 4th division. Her phoenix eyes quietly sized up Wu Qin. Uno Hualai's mouth was wide open as she tried her best to hide her shock. When Dustless escaped from prison previously, he must have already destroyed all of the seals. Now, it actually became untouched again. How could she not be shocked? Looks like it has nothing to do with him. Suozhen lowered his head in disappointment. TSK. You big black bear are really not a good thing. If I were the one who did it, you would have pulled out your blade and cut me down. You treacherous villain. Seizing the opportunity, Dustless bombarded him indiscriminately, mercilessly mocking Suozhen. Because of the Eastern Deity Fortress, Suozhen's relationship with Dustless was not harmonious. Moreover, because Dustless had killed Suozhen in an instant a few years ago, he had lost all his face. The grudges between them were like water and fire. Dustless didn't let it go. Just as he was about to attack, a strange spiritual pressure that was as strong as a captain's descended on Soul Society. A captain's spiritual pressure. It's strange. It doesn't seem to belong to Soul Society. Jing Le-chun said solemnly, "Could it be that he killed Captain Aizen?" Dustless's eyes flashed. He was familiar with the owner of this spiritual pressure. It was Shinozaki Ichigo. Chapter 1146. The invasion of the Traveler's Calamity, and the Ryatsu of one of them was no weaker than a captain's Ryatsu. The entire Soul Society was on high alert, and all the captains returned to their respective divisions to fight the enemy. Unohana Retsu was no exception. Although the 4th Division wasn't a combat division, they still needed to prepare some medical equipment and medicine. As soon as the battle began, there would be an endless stream of injured people coming to the 4th Division. "Why are you back?" Just as she rushed into the captain's office, Unohana Retsu was stunned. Dustless was sitting with his legs crossed, looking so relaxed that he almost fell asleep. "Again. You're so boring. I've been in the 4th Division and haven't moved." Dustless raised his eyebrows and asked. "Of course, because the captain was with us, so I went." In just a few minutes, Uno Hualai explained everything that had happened to everyone. "I see. Seems like you were all fooled by Aizen. How could he be killed? That kid is jumping around happily, and he's about to betray Soul Society." Dustless shook his head with a bitter smile. The Shinigami were all fooled by Aizen. That should be Zanpakuto. You were all hypnotized by Kyoka Suigetsu, and your 5 senses were controlled by Sosuke Aizen. Naturally, you can't tell right from wrong. Squinting his eyes, Dustless lazily explained. Aizen Sosuke was killed. That was impossible. There was no one in this world who could say that they could kill him. Aizen Sosuke was strong and cunning. His stats were perfect. If Dustless didn't know about Aizen Sosuke's past, he might have been fooled by him. It's okay. Don't worry. That kid's every move is within my plan. It won't be long before he takes advantage of this chaos to ambush the captain. Dustless's eyes flashed red as he said coldly, Yamamoto's Genryusai Shigekuni is coming to an end. He already saw Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu being at a disadvantage, and now I took away his Zanpakuto's ability. If I'm not wrong, the strongest Shinigami in a millennium is about to enter the end. Hearing this, Uno Hualai's eyes clearly dimmed and became listless. There's no need to feel sad. I was only able to lead the Grim Reaper forward after I became the head captain. He's already a few thousand years old, he's not suitable to be the head captain. Dustless patted Uno Hualai's shoulder and comforted her, his long-cherished wish is for Soul Society to be peaceful. Only under my leadership can Soul Society be truly peaceful. That's true. After letting out a heavy sigh, Uno Hanaretsu could not deny that Dustless was stronger than head captain Yamamoto, so he was destined to be a greater threat. Boom boom boom. Powerful spiritual pressure spread out in all directions, and the surrounding buildings were all shattered. The shockwaves produced by the battle between the two figures turned the surrounding area into a large vacuum zone. What kind of monster is this guy? He's completely fine after being hit. Shinozaki Ichigo held his Zanpakuto with both hands as he looked at the man who was confronting him in horror. This man was close to 2 meters tall, and his body was covered in wounds, especially the crescent-shaped wound on his abdomen. An ordinary person would have died on the spot, but this man with a rough face was completely fine. Zaraki Kenpachi. This name appeared in his mind, and combined with the 11 written by Captain Haori, Shinozaki Ichigo instantly remembered the captains that Urahara Kasuke mentioned before. He, a crazy laughter came out of Zaraki's mouth, and it made people's hair stand on end. He said with a hideous smile, it seems that I came to the right place to fight with you. In Soul Society, there are 13 captains as strong as you. Shinozaki Ichigo's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his heart was extremely heavy. Strong? What nonsense are you talking about? I was killed by that man in an instant. Although there are 13 captains, they are not the strongest. Dustless's figure appeared in his mind, and Zaraki's murderous aura suddenly stagnated, and he became talkative, but that guy was suppressed more than 10 years ago. Gulp. You were killed by someone in an instant. Shinozaki Ichigo's voice was trembling, and his pupils were enlarged several times. He suddenly felt a chill on his back. How strong is he to be able to kill a captain in an instant? After hearing that he was suppressed, he breathed a sigh of relief. In the central room 46, 3 figures gathered. They were Aizen Sosuke, Ikamaru Jin, and Higashi Senmei, who had already faded out of sight. His arms that were cut off by Dustless were also restored by Aizen Sosuke with the power of Hogyoku. Aizen-sama. Higashi Senmei was extremely grateful, and his voice was choked with emotion, and he almost knelt down and kowtowed. Aizen Sosuke just nodded, his heart was like ice, and he didn't even look at Higashi Senmei. If his 10 blades weren't destroyed by Dustless, Aizen would have killed him immediately. This is the last step of our plan, and we can leave Soul Society. Looking at the first division in the distance, Aizen Sosuke said expressionlessly. The last step. Higashi Senmei and Ikamaru Jin looked at each other, and then at Aizen Sosuke. Aizen glanced at the two and said coldly, kill Yamamoto. Chapter 1147. Hearing Sosuke Aizen's monologue, Ikimara Jin and East Senin Yoro felt like their brains weren't enough to process it. Their brain cells were instantly killed. Are you sure you want to do this? The head captain's combat power isn't something we can handle. East Sensei Yoro's face shrank. His reputation as the strongest Shinigami wasn't groundless, it was earned through countless battles. I deliberately attracted Ichigo Shinozaki to Soul Society to distract the Godai 13. We can take this opportunity to see how strong head captain Yamamoto really is. Aizen glanced at Higashiin and said in a firm and fearless tone, if we're afraid of Yamamoto, then there's no need to worry about Division 0, which is stronger than the Godai 13. East Sensei Yoro immediately shut up after hearing this. Even the head captain didn't dare to fight them, how could he wipe out Team 0? Everything was just empty talk. On the other side, the battle between Ichigo Shinozaki and Zaraki Kenpachi was also coming to an end. Both of them were covered in wounds. Boom boom boom. The white Ryatsu and the golden Ryatsu collided with each other, causing a huge explosion. Both of them stared at each other, preparing for the final blow. Ha ha ha, it was a carefree laugh, but combined with Zaraki's hideous face and his bleeding body, it gave people a sense of hysteria. Ever since I fought with that guy, I haven't felt so good like today. I want to thank you, Ichigo Shinozaki. Zaraki laughed wildly, his eyes were red, and his body was uncontrollably excited. The battle with Dustless was very frustrating. He used all his strength, but in the end, he couldn't touch Dustless. Even if he was right in front of him, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't hit Dustless. Instead of a battle, Zaraki felt like he was a clown performing alone. You can't stop me, you must save Rukia. Ichigo Shinozaki's eyes were shining brightly, and his tone was firm. This was a duel between two beasts. Roar roar roar. Zaraki Kenpachi and Kurosaki Ichigo tensed up. Perhaps it was due to their desire to win, Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu suddenly changed, becoming violent and bloodthirsty. This unique spirit pressure swept across the sky and landed in every corner of Silent Soul Society. This seems to be the smell of void. In the dark space, a strange murmur sounded. Under the first team's quarters was the infernal hell. There was clearly a person tied to a specially made stone chair. This person was tightly bound by mysterious black bandages, unable to move. Only his mouth was exposed, and even his eyes were sealed. Although the person's appearance could not be seen clearly, it was not difficult to distinguish from the thin and small outline that this person was dustless. Unlike Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu, Dustless's Zanpakuto was being restrained. This is undoubtedly Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu, but there is also the Void's Ryatsu. It seems that when I awakened the Shinigami's power, I also awakened the Void's power. Dustless muttered to himself. Even if he couldn't see, he was quite familiar with Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu. The moment it was exposed, he could almost determine that it was Kurosaki Ichigo. Forget it, he's just a chess piece, no need to care. Feeling the level of Ryatsu, Dustless decisively ignored Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu. This Ryatsu was comparable to the captain level, but compared to him or Aizen, it was not worth mentioning. I hope the 4 Maple Quartz Yoruchi will hurry up. I don't feel comfortable staying in this damn place for one more second. In the dark and cold space, the surroundings were dead silent, as if there was no one in hell, isolated from the world. Is it finally here? The show is about to start. The corner of Dustless's mouth curled up slightly. Suddenly, he raised his head, and above him was the first team's quarters. Yamamoto, who was in the first team, looked at the distant sky and quietly observed the busy Shinigami. Almost all the Shinigami of each division were searching for the traces of the traveling calamities. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the spacious open-air conference room, 3 figures suddenly appeared. They were all wearing the captain's haori, and their faces were not friendly, especially the blood-stained Zanpakuto. Captain Ikamaru Jin. Captain Aizen, aren't you dead? Anne. East Sensei wants you. Bastard, weren't you locked up in the Avicii hell? Who the hell let you out? The captain, who regained his senses, was filled with murderous intent. Captain Aizen, you're asking so many questions at once at such an old age. Looking at Yamamoto, Aizen smiled and said, but I'm in a good mood today, and since I'm about to go to hell, I'll answer your questions one by one. A few decades ago, the Hogyoku that East Sensei took when he escaped from Soul Society was actually developed by me. Today, I'm also the one who let him out, and my death is also fake. Today, the traveling calamities invaded Soul Society, and the purpose is to distract the captains, and then I'll take the opportunity to kill you. So much nonsense to kill a person. Dustless, who was locked in hell, curled his lips. Through the consciousness hidden in the Hogyoku, Aizen and the captain's conversation was clear. He silently hoped that Aizen would quickly become the captain, and the future of Soul Society would be taken over by Dustless. Chapter 1148. Dustless heard Yamamoto's crisis clearly. Now that he was deprived of his Zanpakuto, and he had seen Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu Shirkai, he was doomed. Especially since it was a 3v1, Yamamoto's situation was critical, and Aizen's victory was in his favor. Old man, it's better that you die quickly. Save yourself the trouble of bossing people around every day. Let me take your place to protect the peace of Soul Society. With a frosty expression, Dustless sneered in his heart. After Yamamoto died, his position as the captain would be vacant, and Dustless would have the opportunity to take it. Boom boom boom. Even without the Zanpakuto, the strength of the head captain was still extraordinarily powerful. The aura all over his body burst out, and it was very shocking. Ikamaru Jin and East Sensei were sweating profusely. Only Aizen Sosuke felt better. Soul Society didn't do anything wrong to you, why did you betray Soul Society? Betray Soul Society. Betray the entire Shinigami. Do you want to learn from Dustless? Sosuke Aizen. The captain's tone was 3 parts sadness and 7 parts hatred. Learn from him. How is that possible? My plan was born hundreds of years ago, and he wasn't even born at that time. Hearing this, Aizen said with disdain, and his eyes locked onto Yamamoto, I was the one who caused that group of captains to disappear 100 years ago. You, hearing this, Yamamoto's heart trembled, and he clenched his fists, and his spiritual pressure erupted even more fiercely. Hee. Seeing this, Ikamaru Jin grinned as he unsheathed his Zanpakuto and laughed, kill him, Shinigami. Shoo shoo shoo. Almost in an instant, Jin's Zanpakuto extended hundreds of times and was about to pierce through Yamamoto's Genryusai Shigekuni. Clang clang clang. The sound of metal colliding was heard, and the Shinigami's Shinigami was pushed back by a powerful force, and the wall behind Yamamoto was penetrated. A cool breeze blew in, and the mysterious person's hair fluttered in the wind. Oh. Captain Kyoka, and Captain Yukitake, your mission is to search for Yamamoto, and attacking without permission is a big problem. Jin's hand shook, and he took back his Shinigami. It was Kyoka Shunsui and Yukitake Jushiro. Yosuke Fuji. Is what you said just now true? Yukitake Jushiro's face was extremely pale. From the way he called him, Aizen and Yukitake Jushiro's relationship was very deep. As you can see, it is my wish to destroy Shinigami and establish a new order. Looking at Yukitake Jushiro's sad eyes, Aizen's heart was as calm as still water, without the slightest change's heart. Sosuke Aizen didn't have any feelings for this person, he even hated him. His naive thoughts were the opposite of Sosuke Aizen's beliefs. Silver, yes. I'll leave Captain Jing Lu and Captain Floating Bamboo to the two of you. Just hold them back. As for the head captain, I'll take his life. Higashi-sensei and Jin looked at each other and pulled out their swords to attack. Boom boom boom. The swords danced, and Ryatsu raged, and the teens' house was instantly razed to the ground. The tyrannical Ryatsu was unstoppable, and everything it touched was turned into dust. Why don't you pull out your sword, head captain? Staring at the head captain, Aizen pointed out, are you deliberately holding back, or is your Zanpakuto ineffective now? Hearing this, the head captain's sunken eyes suddenly bulged out, and he stared at Aizen and guessed, are you the one who took away my Zanpakuto's ability? It seems like the Hogyoku's consciousness is right, this old guy's Bankai can't be used, and Ryujin Jaka that can destroy the world has become an ordinary Zanpakuto. Seeing this, Aizen's confidence skyrocketed, and he looked at the head captain with eyes full of fighting spirit. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He pulled out Kyoka Suigetsu and raised his hand to attack. Oh. Do you think you can escape? Jin and Higashi-sensei wanted to chase Shunsui and Yukitake Jushiro, but Jin's face was full of ridicule. Is that so? You two may have forgotten that this is Soul Society. Floating in the air, Shunsui stabilized his body and said in a deep voice, there are many other captains in Soul Society, you should be the ones running, not us. Are you sure? Hearing this, Higashi-sensei's old-fashioned face showed a rare playful expression. Be careful, Yukitake, they must be plotting something. Since they dared to attack the old man, it means that they have a backup plan, and Aizen is the kind of man who can see 3 things ahead of him. Shunsui lowered his head and said solemnly. That's right. Yukitake Jushiro nodded, and looked around at the two, tense and alert. No matter what, let's tell the captains the news of these 3 defecting to Soul Society. Shunsui pondered, then he stretched out his hand, and countless deep black holes suddenly appeared in the void, and a dignified voice spread out, Bakuto 77, Heavenly Kong Luo. Everyone, there is an urgent matter that needs to be told. Shuinsui's voice rang in the ears of the captains and vice-captains of the Godai 13. Chapter 1149. The captains of Soul Society all heard Shuinsui's voice, and even the invading traveler Calamity received special treatment from Shunsui. Everyone, I'll keep it short. Shunsui calmed himself down and said, Aizen Yusuke and Ikamaru Jin have betrayed Soul Society. East Sensei was also released from infernal hell by them. Come and help us. With that, Shuinsui's clenched fists loosened, and the dark cracks in the black cavity used for communication were all closed. Phew, you can't escape this time. Shunsui breathed a sigh of relief, and his sad face regained some color. Is that so? Ikamaru Jin still maintained his sly smile. He was very cunning and despicable. His expression didn't change. He had already expected this. Jushiro Yukitake and Shunsui didn't say anything. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After a few minutes of confrontation, there were several explosions in the sky, and then the captains of each division arrived. Seems like they're all here. Jin's narrowed eyes suddenly opened, and his gaze was like a viper's. You actually chose to die together, your sincere feelings are really tearful. East Senjin sneered before Jin could speak. How dare a mere traitor be so arrogant? The captains glared and released their spiritual pressure, and when they were about to suppress the two together, a violent explosion made their hearts tremble. Head Captain Sama. The old body was mercilessly blown away, smashing through several walls and leaving a long mark on the ground. He was covered in blood. Sosuke Aizen, who was holding his Zanpakuto, was unharmed. Head Captain Sama, why didn't you release your Zanpakuto? The captains were shocked and puzzled at the same time, and they were worried about the head captain. On the other hand, Aizen was relaxed, and they were confused. It's useless for the head captain to release his Zanpakuto. He saw Aizen Sama's Shirkai, and he's doomed to lose. East Senjin said calmly. I'll go help the old man. Shunsui lowered the brim of his hat and said decisively. Help him. You'll die if you go. Jin smiled and said, what's more, you don't have time to save others, you should worry about your own safety. Caw caw caw. Jin's words were like a prelude to destruction. Dozens of large crescent-shaped cracks appeared in the sky above Silent Soul Society. Is this a black voice? Bastard. As Shinigami, you actually colluded with the Great Void. The expressions of the captains changed, and they finally understood why Jin and East Senshi were so fearless. Roar! Roar! Kill all the death gods, don't let any of them go. Inside the Black Chamber, the excited shouts of the Great Void Realm experts could be heard. They flew out of the Black Chamber like flies, looking at the beautiful scenery below. The Soul Society seemed to have been injected with chicken blood as they all flew down like a swarm of bees. This is bad. Jingle Chunchue and the other death gods led the team leaders' expressions changed drastically. Most of these voids were trash, belonging to the lowest level of existence, but they had the advantage in numbers. The densely packed voids almost covered the sky above Soul Society. I'll go stop some voids. I'll leave this to you guys. Just as she was about to leave, a black flash of light descended from the sky. Ha! 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 Boom boom boom. A giant flame mushroom cloud exploded in front of Soi Feng, blocking her path. Looking up, a group of great voids walked out of the Black Chamber. Each of them took off their masks, and the most eye-catching thing was that they had weapons similar to Zanpakuto. These guys are the protagonists. The captain's expressions were extremely ugly. The great voids before were just small fries. There are 3 Vastolord. The captains looked at each other, sweat dripping from their foreheads. Stark, Ulquiorra, and Hellable were clearly visible. In addition, there were also Jin and East Senshi. There were also a few Achuka's level Arankars. The scales of victory were obviously leaning towards Aizen Sosuke's side. Everyone, although it's a bit embarrassing, I still hope you can hold on for a while. At this moment, Jingle Chunchue suddenly said, turning his head to look at the captain who was temporarily suppressed by Aizen Sosuke. His hesitant eyes became more resolute. Aizen Sosuke's Kyoka Suigetsu was invincible. If he wanted to preserve Soul Society, he had to find another way. Using Shuinpa to the extreme, he disappeared in an instant. If this continues, Soul Society will definitely be annihilated in the end. The situation seems to be beyond imagination. In the deepest part of hell, Dustless whispered. At the same time, he understood Aizen Sosuke's intention. He wanted to use this opportunity to wipe out Shinigami in one fell swoop and completely wipe out Soul Society's Shinigami. Clang! In the dead space, there was a sudden roar of steel, and observation hockey spread out. Are you finally coming to let me out? The 4 Maple Courts Yi-Ichi finally came to fulfill the original cooperation treaty. Exhaling heavily, the figure was getting closer and closer. Carefully using observation hockey to lock on the newcomer, his relaxed face suddenly solidified, and his mouth uncontrollably said, Jingle Chunchue? It's you. Jingle Chunchue's body stiffened when he heard the words, looking at Dustless in surprise, and his heart was raging for a long time. This guy's whole body was bound, and his Ryatsu, including his eyes, was sealed. He didn't release his Ryatsu himself, but Dustless guessed his identity. It's as if he has other eyes. How did you find out? Forget it, these are superfluous. Thinking of the terrible situation of Soul Society today, Jingle Chunchue could only say the important things. Chapter 1150. Fiercely sucking in a mouthful of ice-cold air and calming his restless and burning heart, Shuinsue's thoughts became a lot clearer. He deeply looked at the man who was tied to the chair. Every time he met him, there would always be a different kind of miracle. Let's cut to the chase. I'm here to tell you that your enemy, Sosuke Aizen, has betrayed Soul Society and is now on the same path as you. After that, Shunsui stared at Dustless and added, he definitely won't let you go. So what? There are countless people who won't let me go. In the end, I'm the one who has the last laugh. Dustless's expression was ordinary, but he knew that Shunsui was implying something. You don't seem to understand what I mean. Seeing that Dustless didn't understand, Shunsui went straight to the point. Sosuke Aizen's purpose is the same as yours. Oh, no, it's even more hateful than yours. He wants to kill all the Shinigami. Although you are now in prison, don't think that you can stay out of it. After all the Shinigami are finished, the next target will be you. Shuinsui's tone was serious and threatening. What he meant was that everyone was now in the same boat. So that's how it is. You want to borrow my strength to deal with Sosuke Aizen. Dustless suddenly understood Shuinsui's intention. After calculating the gains and losses, he suddenly felt that this plan was feasible. He could use this opportunity to clear his identity and wash away the previous stain. But even so, Dustless couldn't agree in a hurry. At least, he had to delay until the head captain died. And he had to give some benefits before he could compromise. If he agreed casually, it might arouse Shuinsui's suspicion. Don't be fooled by his casual appearance, he was actually very meticulous. Any flaw would be caught by him. You want me to help you? Dream on. Dustless showed a sour face and directly refused. Silent Soul Society was already in a mess. Battles were going on everywhere. Even Shinozaki Ichigo was besieged by the Daimoku. Perhaps it was because of his charisma that a Sanjinrinji chose to fight together with him. He even released Rukia, who was imprisoned. At the same time, on the other side, Jin Ikamaru and East Sensei joined forces with the three Vasto Lord Great Emptiness, suppressing the captains to the point that they couldn't breathe. Pucci. The white sword pressure was unstoppable as it pressed down on Sosuke Aizen. Child's play. You're just a so-so without Ryujin Jaka. Sosuke Aizen's mouth curved into an elegant smile. Kyoka Suigetsu condensed a high density of Ryatsu, and the tip of the blade. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a wave of his hand, the tip of his saber became glossy, and the two sword presences inevitably collided. Boom 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 boom. The intense sword pressures collided fiercely, and the aftermath spread out. No one was willing to give in, and they both wore down each other's strength. In the end, the two sword pressures cancelled each other out, and no one hurt the other. Only the first team was flattened by the shockwave. Yamamoto was so angry that his bones trembled, but he could only endure it. Whoosh! A violent hurricane came head-on, and the momentum was sharp, obviously with a cold light. Looking closely, it turned out to be a Zanpakuto that was coming head-on. Yamamoto's movements were even more strange. Even if he realized the danger, he pretended not to know. Pucci. The Zanpakuto penetrated Yamamoto's body, leaving a bright red mark. One-hit kill. No matter how good you are, this is the end. Sosuke Aizen chuckled. The nail buried in his body was removed, and he was in a good mood. Yamamoto's heart was crushed by him. Even if this old man dies, I will drag you down with me. Yamamoto used the last of his strength to grab Aizen's arm. His Ryatsu erupted like magma. Die together. Don't joke around. What you're holding now is just an illusion created by Kyoka Suigetsu. It's not the real me. Sosuke Aizen replied calmly, his expression unchanged. Don't try to fool this old man. Your ability is indeed terrifying. After fighting for so long, this old man couldn't even touch your clothes. Yamamoto's body was full of holes, and Sosuke Aizen's clothes were clean. Kyoka Suigetsu's ability was terrifying, and Aizen couldn't even catch his real body. However, your Ryatsu won't lie. This old man is sure that this is your real body. Hearing this, Sosuke Aizen's pupils shrank, and his face turned green. He said with a hoarse voice, "So, you deliberately exposed a flaw to lure me? You're gambling with your life." Yamamoto smiled and looked at him with disdain. "This is why you're not as good as Captain Dustless. You only know how to use despicable abilities." This old man fought him head-on. Aizen was like a stone, and he didn't have the slightest emotion. The winner was king, and there was no such thing as being honorable or despicable. History was written by the victors. Die with this old man. Hatos 96, One Sword Cremation. Yamamoto's entire body emitted a boiling Ryatsu that was close to materialization. Yamamoto used his final technique, and a blade-shaped flame engulfed him and Aizen. Boom boom boom. An earth-shattering explosion spread, and it spread to every corner of Soul Society. The power was enough to flatten half of Soul Society. Yamamoto's Ryatsu completely disappeared, and the ruthless flames evaporated him. The strongest Shinigami of this generation had fallen. Chapter 1151. Somehow, Shunsui also seemed to feel the death of the head captain. His heart suddenly trembled, the corner of his eyes twitched slightly, and he remained silent. He needed time to stabilize his sadness. You don't have a choice now." With a cold look, Shunsui decisively chose to shut up. It was a waste of time to talk nonsense with people like Dustless. His thick hairy arms grabbed the stone chair he was sitting on, his zanpakuto was unsheathed, and he looked at Dustless indifferently. "What do you want to do?" Seeing this, Dustless's face changed slightly, instinctively realizing that something bad was going to happen. Shuinsue's eyes were dead, without any extra emotion, as cold as a machine. Dustless keenly smelled other intentions. Staring at Shuinsue's face, he suddenly felt that this guy was going to cut off all means of retreat. Shunsui didn't speak, his eyes narrowed as he looked at the chain connected to the stone chair, and his zanpakuto slashed straight. Clang! 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 Sparks flew everywhere. The chain couldn't withstand the force and suddenly broke. Shuinsue's zanpakuto cut off the thick chain, and the bound stone chair suddenly loosened. According to the current situation, borrowing your power is necessary, otherwise Soul Society's end will be miserable. Don't think you can stay out of this matter. After saying that, Shunsui directly carried the huge stone chair out of Avicii hell. This bastard wants to use me as a tool. Suddenly understanding Shuinsue's intention, Dustless's eyes twitched, thinking of a countermeasure. In the outside world, everyone stared blankly at the scorched earth of quiet Soul Society. The massive attack caused the entire sky to tremble. Even the Jillian Knights, who had been slaughtering without any sense of reason, stopped their earth-shattering attacks. It was self-evident what the disappearance of the head captain's spiritual pressure meant. If a person's heart was still beating, spiritual pressure would continue to overflow, and when it completely disappeared, it also meant that the heart stopped beating. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years had become history, disappearing in the long river of time. Oh! This old man is really crazy. I was almost killed by him. In the sad atmosphere, there was an untimely sound of rejoicing. Aizen Sosuke appeared in front of everyone. If he wasn't prepared in advance, he might have been killed. Lawn. Ran. You. Chia. Sosuke Aizen's appearance immediately attracted the hatred of the Shinigami, especially Sujin, who glared at him with bloodshot eyes. He shouted at the top of his lungs. Bankai, Kalasutra King of Heaven's punishment. The earth suddenly trembled, and then a huge shadow appeared in the sky. Soul Society became dim, and a giant zanpakuto that could cut the sky fell from the sky. Aizen Sosuke turned his head and glanced at the left side of the village, then he looked away and simply ignored it. At the same time, a sharp black blade fell from the sky. Dao Breaker 90, Black Coffin. The left side of Kamimura was like the gravity of the earth, attracting all the sharp edges of the black light. His broad body was the best target. Puchi. 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 The powerful light ruthlessly crushed the left side of Kamimura, and his body was bleeding like a funnel. Although I only used 1/3 of the power, it's enough to deal with you. Aizen glanced at the left side of Kamimura and muttered to himself. Boom. Kamimura, who was heavily injured, finally couldn't break the Bankai. After breaking the Bankai, he fell to the ground powerlessly. His breath was weak, and he was only one step away from death. Aizen-sama. Seeing Aizen Sosuke appear, Arankar, who was fighting with the Shinigami, immediately knelt on one knee to show his loyalty. I thought I would need to go to Hueco Mundo to fight against the Shinigami, but it seems that was unnecessary. Looking around at the smoke-filled Soul Society, Aizen Sosuke's majestic voice thundered across the world, destroy all the Shinigami now. Although I don't know what's going on, the bastard who ordered the capture of Rukia was you, right? A ray of light came from behind, and Aizen Sosuke turned his head, revealing half of his face. His eyes flashed with a strange light, but he quickly calmed down. So it's you, Kurosaki Ichigo, you're a good pawn. Hearing this, Kurosaki Ichigo was furious. He had just learned Bankai, and his Zanpakuto was about to cut off Aizen Sosuke's head. Aizen Sosuke shook his head contemptuously and stretched out his arm. Clang! His 5 fingers easily grabbed the Zanpakuto's body, and Kurosaki Ichigo couldn't move. This. You caught my Zanpakuto with your bare hands. Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes widened, and he looked at Aizen with a stunned expression. Aizen's eyes made his soul tremble. Aizen's expression was cold, and he used Kyoka Suigetsu, and a cold ripple splashed in the air. Puchi! Kurosaki Ichigo felt a sharp pain in his chest as a ghastly wound suddenly appeared on his chest. He had instantly killed a Shinigami that was comparable to a captain. His casual attitude reminded everyone of Dustless in the past. He also killed a captain-level Shinigami in one hit, and the so-called captain-level Shinigami was as fragile as a chicken in front of them. Boom boom boom. A thick pillar of energy exploded, and a violent hurricane swept across Soul Society. The ground beneath the ground burst open, and a figure rushed out from it. Boom! Shunsui, who was carrying a stone chair, landed safely and put the sealed Dustless on the ground. You're out. Feeling that his body suddenly became a lot warmer, Dustless couldn't help but look up, and his sealed eyes vaguely saw the sun. Chapter 1152. The appearance of Wu Qin and Jingle Chenshui immediately pushed the atmosphere of the scene to another climax. They all looked at the two people unexpectedly. You should have died a few years ago, right? Why are you still alive? Aizen, who was the first to recover, was shocked. He forced himself to suppress the horror in his heart. He saw Jin kill Dustless with his own eyes, and now he suddenly came back from the dead. How could he not be shocked? Sosuke Aizen wasn't the only one who was shocked, the other captains were the same. They were very familiar with this face that they wanted to forget but could never forget. It was almost imprinted in their hearts. So. The captains who were fighting against the Great Void Masters all landed beside Shunsui and said with an unfriendly expression, Captain Shunsui, why did you release this evil man? Do you think that Soul Society is not chaotic enough and want to speed up its destruction? Hearing this, without waiting for Shunsui to answer, Dustless turned his head and said. Even if he couldn't see, he knew that this person was Soifan through his observation haki. Makes sense. Kuchiki Byakuya nodded. Captain. Rukia, Hinamori, and Matsumoto all had complicated expressions. If it wasn't for Dustless, they might still be wandering in the Shinkai Academy and be regarded as their teacher. Sensing the high Reiatsu level of the three, Dustless smiled and said softly, "So it's you three. Long time no see, it seems that you have improved a lot. Everyone, I can understand your dissatisfaction and resentment, and I will naturally be willing to be punished in the future. However, Soul Society is now in an unprecedented crisis, and I will naturally be punished if I can survive this, but," speaking up to here, Shunsui looked at the great void in the sky and felt extremely melancholy. Jillian, who was still walking out of the black cavity, felt his heart fall to the bottom. Shunsui looked at Dustless and said, "Using evil to fight evil, I don't think there's anything wrong with that." "Ah. You are really cunning, you want to use me as a tool to deal with Aizen. At the very least, you have to remove the seal on my body. Otherwise, I can only passively take a beating, and all of you death gods might be annihilated." His words were full of threats, implying that he would not work until the seal was broken. "No, I'm firmly against it. If the seal was broken, who would be able to control him? Don't forget the dangers of the past." The captain of the 10th Division, Toshiro Hifani, said in a mature tone, not like a child at all. "You're right." Hearing this, Jingle Chenshue nodded. This worry was not unreasonable. It was hard to tell what a person was thinking. If Dustless took the opportunity to betray them, Soul Society, which was gradually losing, would not be able to contemplate the consequences. Then released the seal on his eyes. Shuinsue's eyes shone brightly as he said resolutely, "Even if we die, we have no choice. It's best to use his power to fight Sosuke Aizen." All the captains were silent. Although they felt very uncomfortable in their hearts, they knew that this was an undeniable fact. They could only walk this path to the end. Even if they knew that hell was ahead, they could only press forward. "It's good that you can understand." Shuinsue's dry mouth revealed a faint smile. Silence meant agreement. Immediately, he reached out and grabbed the black bandage next to Dustless's eyes. "Humph. Don't even think about letting him go. Do you think we don't exist?" The demonic voice fell. Dongsing Yu's Zanpakuto swept towards them, temporarily forcing the captains to retreat. Only Dustless was left alone and bound in place. He 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 he, a chilling laughter came out from Dustless's throat. Looking closely, the black bandage that sealed his left eye had been torn off by Shunsui. The purple eye was exposed to the air. "Bastard!" Dongsing Yu was furious. His Zanpakuto was surrounded by cold murderous intent. He raised his Zanpakuto and slashed towards Dustless's head. Naive. The Reiatsu and chakra in Wu Chen's body were released. Even if his four limbs were still sealed, a mere East Sage would not be able to hurt him. Hado 96, the silent Reiatsu went berserk, and the fermented ground turned red. It was very hot. A huge flame in the shape of a sword was printed on the scorched ground. "This is," Dongsing Yu's Zanpakuto suddenly stopped. He looked at the ground under his feet in horror. He remembered that the captain almost killed Aizen Sosuke with the forbidden Hado. He quickly retreated. "Everyone, leave quickly. This is cremation with sword." Shuinsue's pupils shrank as he quickly shouted. At the same time, he also quickly retreated. He looked at Dustless with his eyes wide open and called him a madman. In order to break the seal, he chose to use Hado 96 to attack him. Cremation with sword. The blue sky turned dark red again, and the ravaged quiet soul courtyard cracked open again. The power of this move was beyond imagination. The moment the fire broke through the ground, all life, no matter if it was a Shinigami or a Daimoku, were forced to retreat by the destructive temperature. Including Aizen Sosuke. Boom boom boom. The dark red magma sword exploded, and the aftermath shattered the Daimoku who did not have time to escape, including the black space that connected Soul Society and Hueco Mundo. In front of Cremation with Sword, nothing was worth mentioning. It was as fragile as paper. In the distance, Aizen Sosuke's face turned black as he clenched his fists. He felt an unprecedented humiliation. Just now, he actually ran away. His old face turned red, and his body stopped responding in the blink of an eye. What the hell is this thing made of? It's so hard. It was hit by Cremation with Sword, but it was not damaged at all. Dustless's whisper came from the fire pillar that connected heaven and earth. Chapter 1153. Whether it was the Great Void or the Shinigami, they were all stunned. The flames from the fire pillar almost made them collapse. They felt like they were walking in magma hundreds of meters away. And Dustless, who was in the center zone, actually did not even have the slightest reaction. His entire person was calm and collected, without the slightest injury. The desolate tone just now was clearly complaining that the power of cremation was too weak and that it couldn't destroy the various sealing items that bound him. You bastard! Tozai Isami's murderous intent locked onto Dustless, who was bathing in the fire pillar. He felt like his heart was being cut into pieces. Don't worry about these Shinigami. Attack that sealed man with all your strength. Looking around at the Great Void, Aizen ordered coldly. He pointed his spear at Dustless. Most of the captains had seen his Kyoka Suigetsu, so it was easy to deal with him. Only this monster was the most difficult to deal with. He had seen the release of Kyoka Suigetsu, but he wasn't affected at all. Ah! The Great Void Realm experts nodded one after another. They all used their strongest moves to attack Wu Qin. He sat on a special stone chair and was sealed to the point that he couldn't move. He was a natural living target. So. All kinds of void flashes filled the sky. The sky above Soul Society was dyed in different colors. All kinds of void flashes bombarded Dustless. Rukia, do we need to help him? Looking at the sealed Dustless, Kurosaki Ichigo's heart was bursting. He ignored the wound on his chest and said seriously, that guy called Aizen is very strong. He killed me with one strike. Shiomu Rukia glanced at Shinozaki Ichigo and said, is that so? However, Captain Wu Qin once killed Aizen Sosuke in one hit. Kurosaki Ichigo's mouth opened so wide that it could fit a fist. His head instantly exploded. If he could be killed by void flashes, Soul Society wouldn't have to spend so much effort to catch him. His combat power is higher than the entire Godai 13. Shunsui lowered his hat and said seriously. The captains lowered their heads and pondered. Although they were quite unhappy with Shuansui's words, they couldn't deny that it was true. What's this illuminating light? Dustless curled his lips in disdain. His left eye suddenly widened, and an overbearing aura rose into the sky. Golden ripples visible to the naked eye spread like waves. Haoshiku Haki swept across the entire sky above Soul Society. The incoming void flashes didn't touch Dustless and exploded in the air. Boom boom boom. A series of explosions were incessant, and all kinds of void flashes exploded one after another. In just a minute, the sky above Soul Society was filled with the aftermath of all kinds of void flashes and explosions, turning into a forbidden area. Only Dustless seemed to be unaffected, and the others all retreated. The group of Grim Reapers looked at Dustless, who was standing peacefully with a complicated expression. They felt very upset. The death of the head captain was as if the backbone of Soul Society was broken. All the captains had lost their faith and were at a loss. Looking at Dustless, they secretly sighed. The dignity of Soul Society needs a prisoner to defend it. It's ridiculous. Whoosh! Amidst the black smoke, an ear-piercing howl was heard. Looking up, a great void was dashing over at the speed of light. There was a shiny long gun in his hand. Ulquiorra. Only half of his eye was exposed, which was the reincarnation Sharingan. Dustless joked, worthy of being Aizen Sosuke's #1 loyal dog. Oh, no, the #1 loyal fan. Void's detection nerves and hearing were second to none. Dustless's words were clearly heard by Ulquiorra. His Ryatsu suddenly increased, and the Ryatsu in his hand shined brighter. Whoosh! His diving body suddenly stopped, and the long gun in his hand was thrown out forcefully. Thunder Spear. The tip of the spear flashed with lightning, and the sharp crackling sound was even more chilling. With Ulquiorra's anger, it smashed toward Dustless. Whether it was the #1 dog or the #1 fan, it deeply hurt Ulquiorra's self-esteem. Dustless's eyes were fixed on the falling spear, and an irregular black flame flashed in his eyes, Amaterasu. A black flame burned on the body of the thunder spear. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed the entire spear. When it was about to hit Dustless, it was swallowed up by Amaterasu. Ulquiorra opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. I'll just defeat you all in one fell swoop. Dustless muttered to himself. His tone was as plain as eating and drinking. With your current state. Aizen raised his voice and mocked, do you know how many voiders are in Soul Society now? I can tell you clearly that this number is impossible to estimate. If I have to find an adjective, it would be thousands of voiders. You can't do it, but it doesn't mean that others can't. Dustless glanced at them and whispered, Kai Bao of the King. The void behind Dustless splashed thousands of ripples, and then countless divine weapons came out from it. The sky behind Dustless was dyed golden by the massive number of weapons. 1,000, 10,000, tens of thousands. It was like a bottomless pit, and the number of weapons kept increasing. No one knew the exact number, but above the great voiders of Soul Society, there were hundreds of divine weapons floating above their heads. How many abilities does this guy have? Aizen was stunned, and his eyes were burning with jealousy. He looked at Dustless with jealousy. This guy seemed to be omnipotent, and there was no ability that he didn't know. The so-called Vasto Lord was like a baby in swaddling clothes in front of Soak Aizen, not worth mentioning. It's faintly, Soak Aizen began to chant, and every time he said a word, the sky would turn dark. This is a good opportunity. Staring at the fragments behind Ulquiorra and Stark, this distance was just enough for him to use that technique. Dustless's purple eyes widened, and he shouted, Heavenly Hand Power. Together with the sealed special stone chair, it appeared behind Ulquiorra and Stark in a strange manner in an instant. Aizen-sama is powerful, he can suppress us with spiritual pressure alone. Ulquiorra's respectful eyes were full of admiration and fanaticism, and even stupidly loyal. In his eyes, Sosuke Aizen was already a god. Yes, Aizen-sama is the guiding light sent by God to guide Hueco Mundo. The Minos voids who suffered from Hogyoku Arcana were grateful to Aizen's change of heart. Oh. Then I'm sorry, your god is about to fall. Hearing this, the Minos voids turned around and stared blankly at Dustless floating in the void. They all felt that their worldview had collapsed, and their IQ was not enough. This guy was clearly sealed, and he was even dragging a huge stone chair. However, he moved without making a sound. It was as if he was teleporting through space, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. This was simply blatant cheating. Dustless glanced at Soak Aizen and whispered, Hato 90, Black Coffin. Space and time distorted, revealing the cold and dark depths of the universe. Black demonic light drilled out and almost instantly sealed Soak Aizen. Pucci. 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 The sharp shadowless blade pierced through Aizen Sosuke's body, and even his bones were broken, making a crackling sound. Soak Aizen's body instantly hurt, and just like Dustless said, his body began to fall slowly, and he instantly lost the ability to fight. Aizen-sama. Soak Aizen's Arcana lackeys cried out and rushed towards Dustless with bloodshot eyes. These idiots have all been brainwashed. The so-called Vasto Lord's brain isn't that bright either. The group of Minos Voids who rushed towards Dustless, including Soak Aizen's confidant Ulquiorra, all pulled out their swords and coldly waved them at Dustless. This is a good opportunity, take this opportunity to capture them all. Seeing this, Shunsui Jingle hurriedly gave out orders, which was completely different from his usual sloppy self. Chapter 1155. Everyone knew the saying, take advantage of your weakness. Shunsui Kiraku, who was as cunning as an old fox, seized this rare opportunity to attack Sosuke Aizen. A bunch of idiots. Dustless roared as he saw the group of Minos Grande charging at him. Boundless repulsive force spread out in all directions. Super Shinra Tensei. The destructive impact landed, and all life forms within a few kilometers received a fatal blow. The powerful Minos Grande were directly crushed into powder, and their ashes were scattered across the entire Soul Society. So strong, he is indeed the most abnormal. Shinozaki Ichigo said enviously with a rare hint of respect in his tone. Shinozaki Ichigo's gaze shifted to Sosuke Aizen, who was instantly killed. Shinozaki Ichigo's heart was filled with respect. At first, he thought that Rukia was just making things up, but now it seemed that it was true. Sosuke Aizen could instantly kill him, but Dustless could instantly kill him. Killing a captain-level Shinigami with a snap of his fingers, such strength was beyond Shinozaki Ichigo's understanding. If this kid knew that I was the one who killed his parents, I wonder if he would still be like this. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at Shinozaki Ichigo from the corner of his eyes. Black Void Flash. The black afterglow from hell came from the front. The giant beam was extremely powerful, and the captains and Minos Grande who were in the way sensed the power of the flash and avoided it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The black light passed through many figures, and after a long journey, it finally locked onto Dustless. Just in time. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed. Not only did he not resist, but he also used his willpower to control his body and collided with the black light head-on. Boom boom boom. The power of the black light hit Dustless, and the power was enough to instantly kill a captain. The surrounding space was distorted, but the special stone chair floating in the air and Dustless were not hurt at all. What the hell is this thing made of? It's so sturdy. Dustless lowered his head and looked at the black bandages all over his body. He was rather surprised. Leaving aside the fact that it was completely fine after being directly hit by one-strike cremation, now that it was hit by Black Void Flash, which was even more powerful than Wang Su's flash, it was still as good as new. It was not hard to tell how extraordinary the material used to construct this item was. Forget it, I'll let Team Zero Saiso Tongsen and Shidoro Senjumaru undo it for me. Head Captain Yamamoto died in battle, and it won't be long before they arrive at Soul Society. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked up at the sky. Your enemy is in front of you, not in the sky. It was Stark, the first of the 10 blades, who was pointing a gun at him. You want to challenge me? Come, don't hold back. Blast with all your might. I'm afraid Urahara Kasuke already guessed that Soul Society would be destroyed, so he deliberately delayed my release and pushed me and Soul Society into the same boat. Dustless rolled his eyes and understood Urahara Kasuke's intention. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.